In the year 1988, in a quiet suburb of Tokyo, Japan, a young girl's life was stolen in one of the most shocking and brutal crimes the world has ever seen. Her name was Junko Furuta. She was only 17 years old. And what happened to her is a story of cruelty, silence, injustice, and above all, a story that must never be forgotten. Tonight, we dive into the tragic story of Junko Furuta, often called the concrete-encased high school girl murder case. A crime so horrific, it shook an entire nation, scarred generations, and still raises questions today about justice, humanity, and the darkness that can exist in ordinary people. Junko's life before the crime. Junko Furuta was born in January 1971. She grew up in Misato, Saitama Prefecture, a quiet town not far from Tokyo. By all accounts, Junko was an ordinary teenager, bright, kind, and hardworking. Her classmates remembered her as polite and cheerful. She wasn't rebellious, she wasn't reckless. In fact, Junko had a reputation for being mature and grounded. She wasn't involved in gangs or delinquent circles, which were fairly common in Japanese high schools during the 1980s. She worked part-time after school, saving money, and already had clear plans for her future. Unlike many teenagers unsure about their next step, Junko had decided she wanted to become an office worker after graduation. It was a respectable career path in Japan, and she was determined to make it. Friends later said Junko was the kind of person who always followed the rules, who never wanted to cause trouble for anyone. She represented innocence, hope, and everything good about youth. But that very innocence tragically made her a target. The criminals, 4 teenage boys. To understand how Junko's nightmare began, we need to look at the 4 boys who took her life. Hiroshi Miyano, 18, the ringleader. Violent, manipulative, and already deeply connected to the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicate. Shinji Minato, 16, whose parents' home became the prison where Junko was held. Joe Ogura, 17, hot-tempered and feared by other delinquents. Yasushi Watanabe, 17, the quietest of the group but still deeply involved. These weren't simply mischievous teenagers. They were already engaging in robbery, extortion, and violence. They had reputations as bullies and thugs, feared in their neighborhoods. They were affiliated with local Yakuza groups, giving them a sense of power and immunity. To them, rules didn't matter. Consequences didn't matter. And when they saw Junko Furuta riding her bike home one November evening, they decided to destroy her life, simply because they could. The abduction. On November 25, 1988, Junko finished her shift at a part-time job and was cycling home. She never suspected she was being watched. That night, the 4 boys devised a plan. Miyano, the leader, pretended to have accidentally run into her. He tricked her by offering to walk her home safely. Junko, polite and trusting, agreed. Instead, Miyano led her into the trap. Within minutes, she was forced into a car, beaten, and driven to Minato's home in Iase, a district of Tokyo. This was the beginning of 44 days of unrelenting torture. Life in captivity. From the outside, the Minato household looked normal. A typical Japanese family home in a quiet neighborhood. But behind those walls, Junko Furuta was held captive in conditions too cruel to comprehend. The boys kept her tied, gagged, and isolated. They stripped her of her identity, treating her as property, as an object for their amusement and sadistic pleasure. She was beaten daily. She was assaulted repeatedly. She was forced to endure humiliation beyond imagination. The worst part? They invited others. Reports suggest dozens of people knew about her captivity, friends, classmates, even acquaintances of the boys. Some participated. Most turned a blind eye. For 44 days, Junko was treated not as a human being, but as entertainment for monsters. The silence of bystanders. This case is not only about the brutality of 4 boys. It's about the silence that allowed it to happen. Neighbors heard noises, screams, crashes, but they ignored them. Minato's parents lived in the same house. They later claimed they were too afraid of their own son to intervene. And perhaps the most tragic moment of all, Junko once managed to call the police. She reached out, desperate for rescue. But when officers arrived, she was forced by her captors to say it was a mistake. The police left. The opportunity to save her slipped away. Imagine being that close to freedom only to be dragged back into hell. It is almost unbearable to think about. The final days. As December turned into January, Junko's body began to fail. Malnourished, broken, and in constant agony, she endured as long as she could. On January 4, 1989, after another brutal assault, Junko Furuta finally succumbed to her injuries. She was only 17 years old. Her captors, showing no remorse, stuffed her body into a 55-gallon drum filled with concrete. They left it in a construction site as if discarding trash. A young life, full of promise, reduced to nothing in their eyes. The arrests and trial. In March 1989, police investigating a different crime stumbled upon the concrete drum. Inside, they discovered Junko's remains. Soon, the 4 boys were arrested. Their crime shocked the nation. Headlines called it the concrete-encased high school girl murder case. For many Japanese citizens, it was unthinkable that teenagers could commit such evil. But what came next deepened the outrage. Because the killers were under 20, they were tried as juveniles. Japanese law protected their identities, even though their crime was beyond horrific. Hiroshi Miyano, the leader, received only 20 years in prison. The others received even less. Over time they were all released. Some even reoffended, committing more acts of violence. For Junko's family, for the public, for anyone with a sense of justice, it was a devastating insult. How could such cruelty be met with such light punishment? Media and public reaction. The case made headlines across Japan and around the world. People struggled to understand how something like this could happen in a safe, orderly society. The brutality shocked the conscience of the nation. Parents feared for their daughters. Citizens questioned their police, their laws, their values. Some journalists revealed the names of the killers, refusing to hide them behind anonymity. They argued that their crime forfeited their right to protection. Even today, their names are widely known, forever tied to one of Japan's darkest crimes. Junko Furuta's legacy. Junko's story is not just about suffering, it's about the importance of remembering victims. She wasn't just the concrete-encased girl. She was Junko Furuta, a daughter, a friend, a teenager with hopes and dreams. Her case led to debates in Japan about juvenile law, about police responsibility, about society's silence in the face of evil. While laws did not change as much as many hoped, Junko's memory remains a symbol of innocence stolen, of injustice unanswered. Around the world, her story is shared, not to sensationalize but to remind us of the dangers of apathy. Evil thrives when good people stay silent. And silence is what allowed her suffering to continue for 44 long days. Closing reflections. Junko Furuta's story is one of the darkest in true crime history. It forces us to confront painful questions. How could young boys commit such cruelty? How could friends, neighbors, even parents ignore it? And how could a justice system allow her killers to walk free while her life ended at 17? There are no easy answers. But one thing is clear, Junko's name must never be forgotten. We honor her not by dwelling on her suffering, but by remembering her humanity, by saying her name, by refusing to let her killers or the failures of the system erase who she was. Junko Furuta deserved to live. She deserved to chase her dreams, to grow old, to laugh, to love. She deserved a future. But because her life was stolen, we carry her memory forward. We tell her story not as entertainment but as a warning, a reminder of the importance of compassion, courage, and justice. Thank you for watching and for remembering Junko Furuta. If you believe her story deserves to be known, share this video so others will never forget her name. And if you want more true stories, stories that reveal not just horror but humanity, subscribe to this channel. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, silence in the face of evil is also a choice.